set. If you look at the landscape right now, we have a few actors already traversing the country. Dr. Kizza Besigye is already traversing the country, and he has completed 5 regions. General Muntu is on the trail right now, moving around. What does that mean for the NRM? What does that mean for NUP or UPC? Today we have the big players here to be able to ask questions on what is happening within their parties, but most of all, what do Ugandans desire to see in the elections of 2026? 5 cycles have happened in this country ever since we got into the multi-party dispensation, but all of them have had a few questions than answers. And that's where we want to get to. Electoral reforms, questions like that. Can we have a free and fair election in this country? Also, can the security be out of an election? You can be part of the show. Join us on YouTube. Let us know what you think. Drop your comment there. Hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, or our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, or the number 0709 60 25 92. That doubles both as our text line and our WhatsApp line. So let me get to the panel that is with me this evening. On my immediate left, Dr. Sarah Birete, the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. She's with us. Good evening, madam.
Good evening, and glad to be back on Behind the Headlines.
Happy Eid.
Thank you, and I hope all the people watching have enjoyed their Eid, and they are still enjoying Eid Mubarak.
Thank you very much. Next to her, we skip a seat there and get to Honorable Jimmy Akena, the President of the Uganda People's Congress, but also Member of Parliament representing the people of Lira City. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on Behind the Headlines, and Eid Mubarak to all the viewers.
Oyam, Dokoro, you seem to be going on an upward trajectory now.
We are taking them step by step, constituency by constituency.
We'll get to that one a little bit later. Captain Honorable Francis Edward Babu, a senior citizen of this country and a flight captain at that. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and Eid Mubarak, and Godspeed wherever you are. I hope you have enjoyed today. It's an important day, not only here, but all over the world. And I would like to thank you for having invited us here, to having us, to be with a doctor, to be with the Akena, and then to be with the big man from NRM. These are very important. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you too. Thank you for gracing us. Lastly but not least, makes his maiden appearance, especially with me hosting here, Right Honorable Richard Todong, Secretary General to the National Resistance Movement. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, viewers, and also congratulating our brothers, the Muslim, for a wonderful Eid Mubarak that they were celebrating today. I'm happy to have joined my long-time friends, Sarah, Jimmy, and the Elder Babu. Thank you so much for hosting us this evening.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mukasa Mbide will be joining us shortly. He's the Vice President of the Democratic Party and also a lawyer at that. He'll be discussing in that angle there. But I want to start this a little bit different today, and I'd like to cite with the Right Honorable there. There's been a lot of news since the last week we were here. I don't know what headline has caught your eye and you'd like to comment on that. I'll start with you, then Honorable Babu, then Honorable Jimmy, then I'll come to Doctor here.
Well, there were quite a number of activities. We witnessed quite a number of things. Fortunately, within the NRM party, we were busy with the update of our party register that kept us busy, and yes, that was what kept the party busy, and indeed it was also in the media, and I'll speak more about that later. Okay.
Captain Francis Babu, anything that has caught your ear in a headline in the last 6 days?
Yes, one of the things I've seen is disregard of our laws by our people. A new habit of heckling leaders, and a habit of getting young people to get involved in that kind of thing. Our social media is awash with very unfortunate videos and sceneries and all that, and some of it is a lot of lies. Now our population is being fed with all this information, and that is what I've been seeing in these last few days. Of course, I'm still a very worried man with what is happening in Palestine, in Gaza, and what is happening there is very unfortunate for all of us. A lot of people don't want to talk about this, but it affects all of us. Whatever happens in one part of the world, today the world is small, it's a globalized world. We are all the same. It's very, very unfortunate. And I heard some people heckled the president when he went somewhere. Very unfortunate. I think these are kind of things we should really learn not to do. Even if we have a difference with somebody, we should respect them, and we should bring about sanity in our country.
Thank you very much. Honorable Jimmy, any headline in the last 6 days that has really caught your ear that you can make a comment on?
Obviously, we're coming off the swearing in of my Member of Parliament from Dokolo. But what is capturing us now is, of course, during the budget process, look at the resource envelope, the taxation, and those are issues I think which we need to look at in a lot of detail as to how we're going to be able to manage the expectations and also the preparations as we move ahead. Because at this moment, the resources available to URA is also causing a lot of problems within the business community. And of course, the resources are needed, and the outperformance of the funds which are collected, or the people's tax money, it's not being felt as it should be felt. So it is going to be a difficult point as we try to finalize the budget issues.
Thank you very much. Finally, Doctor, a headline that really caught you that you'd like to make a comment on?
Well, it's the increase of taxes and the sit down by the traders, the standoff between the traders and the URA, complaints on taxes, the new computerized system, the EFRIS, but also the new taxes being introduced, given that we are in a shrinking economic base. The data from URA shows great reductions in the number of the big taxpayers in the country. So as a country, I think we need to focus on how do we make our economy productive so that we generate better taxes other than taxing people out of business. So I hope the legislators, Honorable Jimmy Akenahi and others, will pay great attention to that.
And that's the story we're paying attention to here dearly, because somehow, somewhere, one federation is out, another is threatening to go on strike come Tuesday the 16th of this month, and we'll see what happens there. But let's get to our topic of focus today, where it is the political scene and also the landscape on what is shaping in it. And Dr. Sarah, let me start with you. You have observed not just elections here, but also on the region and as far as possible. When you look at our political climate, Dr. Kizza Besigye is on the road, General Muntu is on the road. There are suggestions that the president would start from the east there. Fortunately, the president of UPC is here. When you look at it and look at the charge that seems to be happening, what do you make of our political climate, and what do you see come 2026?
Well, examining a political landscape has a lot of parameters to assess. Among the key parameters are the political institutions, and our hosts here, our fellow panelists here belong to the political parties. Most of them are involved in internal conflicts. Some of them have, if not all of them, factions. And so the health of the political parties has a lot of impact on the landscape in the country. The other issue that we need to look at are the electoral systems. You talked of the roadmap to elections. The roadmap has been in place for 10 months, largely unfunded. The Electoral Commission has been saying they don't have enough funds to run the roadmap, but also part of the budget figures that the Electoral Commission presented seemed exaggerated. The legal fees for lawyers going into 18 billion. There are 500 million for national players was really a shock to the country. Does the Electoral Commission need to engage in the work of religious leaders, or they need to do their work as cut out in the Constitution. So you have that kind of contradictions from the Electoral Commission. When you come to the socio-economic factors affecting politics, one of them we are talking about is the tax base, the squabbles with the private sector. Yet private sector is an engine for our economy in the country. You talk about rising poverty levels. A lot of citizens cannot make ends meet. When you look at the opening of schools, a lot of parents are still in default in terms of school fees. So how healthy is the citizenry in terms of economic muscle? Then how can they engage and facilitate their political activities? Because largely the political activities are funded by the members of these parties, by the citizens who participate in elections, they need money for campaigns. So all those factors should be taken into consideration. But broadly, you look at the governance landscape, the economic conditions and level of political freedoms in the country. The latest World Freedom Report by Freedom House ranks Uganda as not free. This report was released earlier this year. It ranks Uganda at 35%, 35 out of 100. And the ranking specific is on political rights. Uganda scored 11 out of 40, and on civil liberties, 26 out of 50. In the previous year, 2022, we got 34%. And so we have a 1% mark increase in terms of freedoms in the country. And Uganda is ranked as not free. I know that of recent, the principal for NUP was able to do his country tours before police stopped him. I never understood the reasons why police stopped the NUP country tours. We have seen Besigye freely doing his consultations, the FDC Katonga faction. The by-elections, the last 2 or 3 by-elections have been free, largely free with the limited violence, but we had violence in the Kayunga by-election, we had violence in Bukedea, we had violence in the by-election in Teso where the president ordered the arrest of the officials. And so you have a 50% health bill in terms of using the by-elections as a baseline. So it does not give too much confidence that we shall have a largely free, campaign in 2026. But before I, stop on my opening remarks, I need to note the failure to enact electoral reforms. We are in the 3rd year of the electoral calendar. The Supreme Court did order in the Amama Mbaba's petition that the electoral reform should be enacted in the first 2 years of the year of the new parliament. We are already in the 3rd year, almost coming to an end. Reforms are nowhere to be seen. And in the directives by Supreme Court in 2016, there is a pending reform that the Attorney General never enacted, a reform on punishment for security officers and other public officers who engage in partisan conduct during elections. I don't know why the Attorney General has stayed away from this recommendation, and maybe the professors who filed for contempt of court by Attorney General need to go back and make sure that this reform is enacted, given the level of violence that security forces cause in our elections.
And having observed different elections and looking at what we are looking at in 2026, do you have confidence that we shall have, especially some of the elements you've mentioned, the reforms in place, whatever we need in place to have a free, fair, and credible election? Well,
Given the trend of elections, the 5 elections under the 1995 Constitution, as an actor in governance and electoral reforms, I have no confidence that we shall have a better election. In any case, it might be worse because the trend has been degenerating. The 1996 elections were more free and fair. 2021, every other election is worse than the previous. So given that baseline, I have no confidence that we shall have a better election. I need to be given actions to prove otherwise, that the trend, the declining trend in the quality of elections in this country is likely to take a positive turn.
Thank you very much, Dr. Honorable Mukasambi, the Vice President of the Democratic Party and a lawyer. You're very welcome and happy Eid.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. First of all, I greet you, viewers. I have been delayed a bit. I wish I was like Honorable Todong with a lead car, given the kind of jam by returnees from celebrations. I got a bit disturbed from Masaka.
You're very welcome. Let me let you hold your breath, but let me get to Honorable Jimmy Akena. Honorable Jimmy, what's the state of the Uganda People's Congress, one of the oldest parties, or the oldest party, here since 1960? What's the state right now, and what would you look at, especially precursor to Oyam North and now Dokoro, your performance there?
Both those by-elections have given us a momentum, and it has helped us. Oyam North helped us towards the Dokolo by-election. We were able to find ways of how we can be able to handle the electoral process. But generally, we approach elections knowing that chances are there are going to be attempts to manipulate it. So you come in prepared for that one, and you try to do methods to mitigate or to reduce upon it. So that has been the approach. And we did have some difficulties. Oyam especially, there were some issues which came about, and from the very beginning, when things were getting a little uncomfortable, I contacted the Secretary General of NRM, and I gave my point of view that, please, let us try to have a decent election. So, but throughout, it's the approach which we have to make. And the point which Sarah has raised, I think it is very critical on that some public officers handling partisan matters, I think this needs to be addressed. There's been an issue, and this one I think, since I've got Richard Todong here, let me raise it clearly. He'll get a chance to be able to address it. There were some monies which were distributed supposedly to the leadership of NRM at the local level. But the people who were handling that distribution were RDCs. Now, I would think that an RDC's role is not a partisan issue of distributing some resources to NRM functionaries at the local level. Because RDC is essentially a government employee, of course under the office of the president, but why is an RDC distributing resources to NRM functionaries? This took place openly, everybody saw it, and I think we need to separate these offices. You may be a supporter of NRM, but when you're carrying out a function, a public function, you need to have that separation. I'm sure Todong has his abilities within his own structures of NRM to ensure that resources get to the relevant officers or the relevant leaders, but not using the question of RDCs. So that is a key issue which, going forward, I hope is going to be addressed. But by and large, we have tried to structure ourselves to be prepared within the guidelines or within the roadmap which the Electoral Commission has put out. So we're trying to work on our internal processes such that everything will be ready by the time we come to the general election of 2026. So we're going to be carrying out our internal processes. And I really hope that this time, let us also be able to have a serious policy questions. There are things which have happened of recent which puts us in a very awkward situation. I don't know how much analysis has been done on the results for the recent exams. When I look at the results, the gap between urban and rural is getting worse. The regions, certain regions, you get whole districts who have less than 50 first graders in PLE. Now, this is a crisis, because what future do those young people have if we don't address it, if we don't capture it early enough? And where we're coming from and what we have been going through has reduced the access, in that COVID put a lot of things online. Young children today are going to be competing directly with children across the world who have access to proper education, access to all sorts of things. The jobs in the future are a lot of them are going to can be done remotely. But we're not preparing our young people to be effective in this modern society which we're living in, basing on our own results which have come out of recent. And that actually scares me, that if we don't address it, we're having so many young people with no future, no hope of a future. And even those who manage to make it, there are difficulties which they face. Today, I got somebody who wrote me a very touching letter. Somebody has been in universities in the third year, but his parents have been selling land for him to be able to study. He's the eldest, he's got some younger siblings. And the last bit where they're trying to sell, the clan and everybody sat and said, no, you can't sell anymore, because where is the family going to be? And this is somebody who's stuck in between. He's trying to complete his education. He knows he's being depended upon, but they have lost everything in order to be able to achieve that one. And I don't want to demoralize him that in many of those who will complete will still be stuck in the streets without jobs. We have an economy which is not really catering for our interests. So I am hoping and praying that this time, in this round of elections, let us have a serious debate on some of these issues, away from the personalities. How are we going to tackle the problems which we face as Ugandans realistically and come up with something which is going to be workable?
And Honorable Jimmy, I'm glad you are speaking of the pains and leaving form and discussing substance. But let's get to the Uganda People's Congress. The contradictions that are internal, especially looking at what happened in 2015, two factions in there, the decision by the Court of Appeal, the decision by the Supreme Court, kind of a resolution in 2020. How are you going to resolve those internal contradictions to present yourself for 2026?
If you go back, 2015, disagreements, at least from my side, came from the TDA protocol. TDA protocol usurped, you say, the authority of the party organs in determining our candidates. There was a body which was created under the protocol which could determine candidates from parliamentary level. But that one in our constitution was the constituency conference which determines candidates. And that is where I had a major split. And we went, those who supported the TDA go forward, I was supporting UPC candidates. At the end of the day, the TDA go forward died. If it's a question, if you take from the biblical context, there were two babies in that context. One baby died. The baby which was remaining, UPC, that's the one which you're saying factions are trying to split. But that baby which has existed, all the members of parliament, all the district chairpersons, all the councillors, all the municipal mayors were nominated by what you're calling a faction. The other faction have nobody at any elected level. That doesn't mean that we should not try to bridge our differences and sit down. But in the real aspects of politics, a competitive political process, they actually do not exist. And interpretation of some of the matters which you have touched on, Supreme Court had nothing to do with, it has been played in a context outside of it. Because what they're trying to portray is that I am defying the Supreme Court. What authority do I have to defy the Supreme Court? If the Supreme Court had come up and said, Akena should not be there, how can I stop it? The Supreme Court, it was a matter which we went there on when the matter was still in Court of Appeal and an injunction was issued against us holding a delegates conference. And we went to Supreme Court to ask whether we can have this injunction vacated because we're already in the electoral process towards the 2021 elections. So this is something which was caught up, overtaken by time, but that was a matter in question. None of these other matters which are being touched on. As far as the Court of Appeal is concerned, yes, Court of Appeal came up with a position. I was taken back to Court of Appeal on the issue of contempt, and that case was dismissed by the same 3 judges who gave the earlier ruling. So many of the issues around the legal aspects have been used more on propaganda basis. Where we're heading is an election. Those who are interested should organize themselves, prepare themselves, and present themselves to the electorate. So as far as UPC is concerned, we're going forward, we're putting our best foot forward, and we're going to compete effectively against all other political parties in the 26th general election.
My last question before I come to Honorable Mbide is an agreement, a cooperation between you and the National Resistance Movement. No document is seen. What is that? What is it about? And claims of you not presenting a candidate in 2021 because of this agreement. Your comment on that?
I would not say because of the agreement. 2021, we had the COVID processes, which took us up to the point where we had our delegates conference in August. We could not have the sort of mobilization which we have been doing. And for UPC, the sort of COVID campaign did not work well. So 2021, it was a decision made at the delegates conference. In the circumstances, better we concentrate on parliament and lower local governments to try and maintain a presence, which we were able to do so. But what I need to make extremely clear is that there is no agreement or anything of the sort which can prevent UPC from fielding candidates for any office. We have taken a positive decision to be able to engage, and we've engaged with NRM, we've engaged with other political parties. Myself, I put in a lot of effort towards building of IPOD and building trust within IPOD that we can have some discussions on some serious matters. And that is the attitude which I take. I will always try to engage and try to find solutions where we can discuss the future of Uganda around the table. But as far as elections, there's nothing. UPC will field, as you have seen in the recent elections. We have even had some issues where things were a bit hot between ourselves and those in NRM, but we're going to field, especially in 2026, we're fielding all positions, including the presidency. We're going to have a candidate.
I'm glad you've given us clarity on that. We'll hold you to that when the time comes. But Honorable Mbide, the Democratic Party, started in 1954, seems to be on a trajectory of internal disagreements there, but also a cooperation agreement. What's the state of DP right now? And also this agreement that you have, what does it mean for 2026?
First of all, I am glad you have not mentioned. Elsewhere we have been facing a multiplicity of and a barrage of assertions to the extent that people think we could be having factions, which is not the case. I'm glad you haven't mentioned it. Because what we have, actually, the laws of Uganda on political parties do not recognize factions, because parties under Section 6 are bodies corporate. So it is very unlikely that it's just like a company. Even if you disagreed with UBC today, it is very unlikely that you can hold a faction of UBC. Whatever machinery you can hold under any roof, it would never be a faction of UBC, because it's a body corporate. So, but what we have, we could be having divergent opinions, basing on some of the decisions that the party has taken. That is the essence, in fact, the objective reason that made it a logical necessity by the framers of our constitution to establish organs of the party. And now those organs are intended to sieve all the varying opinions to the extent that at all stages we can arrive at decisions. Now, once a decision is arrived at by an organ of the party, anybody that skedaddles from that decision and attempts to implement something against that decision is now bordering in discipline. Now again, organs of the party that I established for disciplinary purposes will also get into play. Now I get to the agreement that the Democratic Party signed with the NRM with the intent to cooperate. We have got a feeling that we do not have elections that shall have to be held within the meaning of free and fair elections in Uganda by 2026, except if alternative processes and procedures and legal processes and principles are established in Uganda on account of the protocol on good governance. What we are going to have are just the peremptory processes leading to an election, whose results I can even tell you now. Because the results are clear. The president of Uganda will be declared the winner. The runner-up will actually be surrounded at home. Some of those that have been campaigning for the runner-up shall actually be on either police bond, bail, or also surrounded. So we know what will happen. So for me to tell me that I can invest in a thought of a free and fair election under the current circumstances is to tell me that you are going to fetch water for me in a basket and I sit down and wait for it. So that is what informed the objects for which the Democratic Party thought we need a dialogue. So that things are changed, things are amended. You see what the president of UPC has just been telling you. In mathematics in primary school, we used to be introduced to what they called rounding off to the nearest. To the I'm not a very good mathematician, but I have some rough estimate of what it used to be. That when the numbers that you are heading for are below 4, then rounding off to the nearest meant that you go down. You begin mentioning now the lesser numbers. If it is above 5 and above, then you begin mentioning the next number. So what the opposition has resulted into doing is rounding off to the nearest. We have reduced our political parties to achievements of parliamentary seats. So every political party is aware that nobody will become president of Uganda and take oath. So we have left it to become like a Kalicho Gala of some sort, that every after 4 or 5 years, we hold an election and somebody gets declared. And what he does is to establish also a robust process using security mechanisms that stops everybody from rioting on the streets. In fact, even deals are cut by opposition candidates to the extent that they have now kowtowed to the proposals of government, no riots, no what. Then they begin now processing themselves towards taking oath of office for the small offices they have won. Uganda is not preparing itself for a democracy under that kind of regard. We think that there needs to be a dialogue that is national, that we take Uganda back. Why? Because we don't have a government that respects the working of political parties. If even NRM, Honorable Todwang looks good, he's very cerebral, he's an intellectual, he looks in charge. Today, I was speaking to my party president, and we were talking about completely different things. And he said that, by the way, even a monkey sweats. The thing is that the fur on the monkey hides the sweat that is actually exuding. So Honorable Todwang also should be sweating. Why? Because government and the political parties are actually at loggerheads. The parties were not freed for the purposes of becoming free political parties within the meaning of a multi-party political dispensation. You know, the originality of freedom of political parties, we know where it came from. The meeting at Kananasiki, where few presidents, I think there was Thabo Mbeki of South Africa, there was Obasanjo of Nigeria, Abdoulaye Wade of Senegal, and Bouteflika of Algeria. They had proposed the economic action plans that were merged into one and established a peer review. Now, that plan, the G8 said, for us to begin working with you in partnership, in terms of grants, in terms of loans, you must now free political organizations. And that is when now countries started freeing parties. In fact, for us here, the moving swan song on the lips of our leaders was to be Jeko. Let us get rid of them. Not that we are freeing parties that they begin operating as political parties, but those with the sentiments of political parties, multi-partism, should now we get rid of them. So the meaning is that we have got registered political parties, but none of them is allowed to operate, not even NRM. The NRM one time attempted to operate by beginning to skedaddle from the laid out path and thinking of a different candidate. The way the president acted immediately showed up at his office and said, I am available. So now, so to me, I think we need a dialogue. We need a different path as a country. And for you to just tell me that I begin pointing at the sun being the next election to introduce Uganda as a better future, I think I cannot kowtow in that area.
So the cooperation for you is a mitigation of what you're seeing?
Yes, it is intended to establish a completely new El Dorado, a new path
Whose
for
benefit
Uganda.
is this, DP or the Ugandan?
The whole country. What can the DP benefit? DP, I think we are not at a level where we can front a candidate and win. No, we are not yet there. So whatever we are doing is within the interest of those that now, so far, have the capacity to win. I am only surprised that they are not backing it. And even those that have actually, the parties that have signed it, have also started looking at it as capable of being disregarded. Because it is not under any support. And I can see it collapsing.
Let me bring in Honorable Babu. Captain Francis Babu, as a senior citizen of this country, you have seen one election from when this country received independence to now. When you look at our state, what is our trajectory politically and in the state of governance as a country?
Thank you very much. When you stand up and you look at a country from above there where I used to fly, you see a map. And the map I see when I stand up there, starting from 1950s when these parties were formed. And by the way, it was Governor Cohen who came with the instruction that should start political parties. What is interesting how those parties were formed. And if you look at the historical background and you see what happens from 1950 up to 1962, and look how the parties performed, you see exactly a replica right now. That brings me to mind, first and foremost, were we brainwashed by the colonial masters about political parties? Do we understand how political parties work? And therefore, this brings me, these political parties we seem to be fighting in, and they've turned into a battleground. Are we able to contain them? Many years ago, when I was a bit younger, I had a man called Ian Smith and a man called Botha in South Africa saying that Africans cannot rule themselves. It annoyed me so much. And until now, I'm saying it. But when you go back and think about it, where do we have people who are personifying themselves to that statement which were made? Are there people with those behavioral tendencies of not being able to rule themselves? Brings me now to another point. The system we are using, we've borrowed. You know, when we got independence here, I was told that our parliament was built exactly like the Westminster government, parliament. Even the colors of the seats. That's how we copy. The only good thing about parliament is that they put their 15 districts with the different logos for those 15 districts. The next point comes, this thing we copied from the West. They call democracy, multi-parties. What system are they from? It's a capitalistic system, right? Because if you look at Britain, you look at America, you look at most of those Western countries, we are borrowing a system in a capitalistic system where money talks and the rest walks. So we come to our problem, looking at from above. You asked a very good question at the present. The parties have let us down. Have they been disconnected from the population? The parties, are they living in cloud nine? Are they with the people, or they are there, trying to talk about theories and all sorts of things? Do we understand how they work? I've been following our people, our friends in the West. Remember when they had something in Florida? about the Bush and Al Gore, it was a very big thing. There was a lot of manipulation, there was a lot of cheating and so on. They went even up to the Supreme Court, if you remember. What these people did, which you people don't want to talk about, they have heritage houses. They call everybody in that place and say, look, what's the problem here? How can we solve this? It doesn't have to go public. So they sit down, solve their problem. They told Al Gore, listen, you people have been in power for 8 years. Let the other group also go in for 8 years. You go and do environmental thing. We'll give you everything that you need. They came out there. The Supreme Court sat down, wrote a judgment, and that was the end of it. For us, not only do we fight, we do all sorts of things to try and prove a point. Ours is war. I don't think parties must be managed the way they are being managed now. By the way, starting with the ruling party. I don't want you people to think because the ruling party is also got its own problems. The Secretary General is here. They also have their problems. So from that point of view, the behavior and character of our political class needs quickly to change. They need a mind change set. It's got to be changed. They've got to start respecting the people in this country. What is happening? The political class has gone haywire. They are not with the people. They are there calling each other names. They are fighting. They are rioting. They are abusing our judges. They are abusing themselves. We need to change. So before we go to 2026, don't talk about institutions, Electoral Commission, the Chief Justice. No. The people is with the political group. They need to change their stances. They need to change. They need to become a little bit more mature. So, until we can get that, the political class to change their stance, to change their method, to become a little bit more honest to this country, we are going to have a lot of problems. There is manipulation. Who is manipulating? It is not the people. You know, I've been hearing words like manipulation and this. It is the political class that's manipulating everybody. Who creates violence? You know, when people talk about violence, it looks like violence is one-sided. No. Hey, they are all part of it. If you sit down and people were honest to tell us who is causing violence, you will find that the political class, all of them, regardless of the side, are involved in those violences. I am sorry to say. And when you talk about rigging, they are all involved. In fact, you'll be very surprised. Those who claim they are angels, they are the biggest riggers in this town. So, the government, they tell us democracy is the government of the people, for the people, by the people, isn't it? Mm. They've never said the government is for the parties, and for parties. No, it's for the people of Uganda. So you people, the parties are vehicles. Vehicles that have two functions. First function, give us your program and bring us good leaders. That is the vehicle of that party. Without those parties, can Uganda continue? Yes. We can do without them. But we've copied a system. There's something they call multi-party dispensation. We have accepted. We have put it in our constitution. Now they are becoming a liability to us. So, I'm predicting, if the multi-parties do not change their stance and their attitude, we are going to see more independents being elected. Because the parties are playing around on people's psychic, using psychic methods to play about people's brains. So, we've got to sit down and say, what is it? First of all, parties, give us good leaders. Leaders who have got humility. All parties, I'm not talking about one. Give us good leaders. Number two, and it's very, very important, they've got to learn how to control the competition fever. Because during competition, all sorts of things come out. First of all, those who have got some sort of strength, they threaten others. Those who don't have that, they use money. So that goes to the capitalistic side of it. Money talks. So we need even to know how much foreign money is coming to this country during elections. In most countries, it is controlled. I've just been hearing people sending money from foreign countries and bringing money here. How do they get this money and how do we pay it back? So we need to know how this money is used. How much, we need to put there a money, ceiling during elections. Now, all these things, we need to look at them very seriously. And those who are talking about constitutional governance, for example, in most countries, they will tell you how much you can use during the elections. How far can we go? And then our behavior has to change. A good candidate, you have a good candidate. My brother here was quoting of people who are getting involved in these elections, threatening and what. We have a very unfortunate habit in this country of intimidating others. There's no need. When I went in the election, somebody I was standing out with, who happened to be a very senior man then, insulted me so much. But the insult turned positive because I got the votes because of those insults. Do we need to go that way? Is that clean for our people, for our generations who are coming, for our future? No. It has to stop. And Socrates many years ago said democracy is bound to fail if we do not change our character. So our character has to change. Now, you are talking about squabbles. All these parties you're talking about, they're from the same mother. First of all, if you look at these parties and you look at their manifestos, what they propose to do for us, most of them copy each other. They don't even have a manifesto that is serious. They just change the language, change a full stop here, a comma there, it's the same thing. The ideology they have, practically zero. One guy told me, our ideology is we must move the man who's in power next week. Fine. If that's the ideology, how long that will last, I do not know. Then the other man, I must destroy him by next week. So those kind of things must change. My idea here, and you're talking about the elections will be there. Whether we like it or we don't like it, it's constitutional. Somebody said, oh, no, we already know what is going to happen. No, you cannot know what is going to happen.
So will it be a ritual?
No, it's not a ritual. This is because it's a game of lip service. They are threatening the guys who are going to vote. And they're telling, no, even if you vote, we know what is going to happen. Why don't you give them a chance to say, no, vote for the right person? Why do you tell them, no, we know what is going to happen? That means that you're telling them whether they vote or they don't vote, something is going to happen. No, I do not agree with that statement.
Okay.
Ugandans must be given a chance to go and vote. And we must tell them that stop voting symbols, stop voting those who know how to abuse others, vote for somebody who is able to go and lead you. Give them a chance. We are supposed to give them civic education by the Constitution. Not only the voters' education during the voting only. No, we are supposed to have started by now by telling our people, please vote for the right person. All these parties you see, they are going to give you a chance to choose. You are given a choice. They are not supposed to force you to choose. You are supposed to have a choice of different people. And listen to them. Now, we need to tell our people, Ugandans, and to give them confidence that they can change this political class which is playing. The people of Uganda must be told, no, don't be told that your vote does not matter. Time has come for you to vote correctly, vote the people you want, and choose the right people to lead you. And we're looking for leadership qualities. We're not looking for those who can give us money. We're not looking for those who are threatening others. We're not choosing for those who are tribalistic. We're not choosing for those who are going to hide behind religion. We're going to choose somebody who is going to lead us.
Okay. Captain Babu, I'll come back to you. If my need is salt and above soap, how do you tell me the vote? Let me come to Honorable Todong. The National Resistance Movement, first and foremost, congratulations that the registration and the verification have gone successfully. But when you look at the 38 years of your rule and projection of 2026, what do you see in your lens and what do you observe this country needs?
Yeah, thank you, and I'm happy that I'm making my submission after these brilliant people have spoken. I need to congratulate them for their observations. The NRM takes leadership with a very serious effort that it deserves. We don't take leadership for any other purpose but to serve the people. Our main line of interest is to serve the masses, and we attend to the masses. And that is where maybe we differ from other political parties. We need to know the social systems, how society is structured, and where you intend to take society from point A to point B, and what caliber of leaders do you need in that. And I'm happy to talk, and I want to be very civil, because under the multi-party political cooperation, we have the IPOD, where I am the chair of the council of IPOD, and I have my members of IPOD here. So we've been discussing this within IPOD. We are players, they are observers. We as players, what do we see? We as players, what do we have to offer? We as players, how do we groom leaders? How do we expose them to the challenges of Uganda? How do we prepare them for these competitions? It comes to what Honorable Babu is talking about. When you look at the formation of society, how society is structured, this goes back even before the concept of modern governance came, that society evolved over time. When you study social systems, which we've been studying in the political economy, from the primitive stage up to the capitalist stage that we've reached, the stages of which society evolve over time, needs and interests of people keep changing as the population increases, as knowledge improves, as diet improves, as urbanization, technology also improves and changes. And that comes with the resources, that comes with a lot of attention, that comes with a lot of scrutiny of leadership, and that's come with a lot of demand. And when you look at that, how do you position yourself as a leader or as a country to partake all this that comes with the demand of the population? And that is how we take leadership seriously. That we need, our party is a mass party, it's a mass movement. We are not a vanguard party. We are not a party that looks at elitist interests. We look at the masses. How do we, in view of this global arena, global challenges, global development, everything is globalization, how do we pick this rural person to bring him or her to a level where him or her can understand the basics of humanity? And that is how NRM introduced this social programs that we are implementing and we are doing. So how are we preparing? And that is why we stand above others. Because we look at Uganda in a very holistic way, that we receive you, we work with you regardless of your social differences. And that is how we've been able to work with UPC, we've been able to work with the Democratic Party, we've been able to work with all these individuals from different political parties, as you may know, because we don't look at individuals as a problem. We look at individuals as contributors to the development of the country and development of our society. So internally in NRM, if I may speak that, because we are the biggest supplier to the national election, we sponsor candidates in all the constituents of Uganda. Our activities touches every corner of Uganda. So if we don't prepare well, definitely we shall have problems in the national elections. The same with UPC, same with the DP, same with all other parties. Preparation starts from these parties. And when the parties don't prepare well, by the time we go for the national elections, we end up supplying the national table with the individuals that Honorable Babu is lamenting about. People are not well groomed, people who are not understanding what Uganda is, where Uganda should go. Their mind is narrow to small things. We need to expose leaders to critical thinking and critical analysis. we as leaders, do we touch base with the local person? Do they think the way we think? And that is why elections are very important, because you test your theories with what the local person thinks. And that is how we have been winning elections time and again, because we understand. Our national chairman always says leaders are like social doctors. If doctors don't examine the patient well, you don't analyze the patient well, you don't prescribe the medication well, that patient will never come out of the situation he is. So the populations are like patients that should be handled by leaders. Now, if leaders don't think on how to handle this ordinary person who needs help, then we shall not be leaders. We shall always be lamenting the gap, like Honorable Jimmy said, the gap between the rural and urban will keep increasing, the rich and the poor, the gaps will be increasing, the gap between women and men will be increasing, children and adults, the gaps will be increasing, elite and the ordinary person, the gaps will be increasing, and then the society will be developing, but in a way that is not uniform. And that kind of society is very dangerous, which should not be something that leaders should look at. So we are looking at this holistically as a party, and we encourage those with the critical minds and critical thinking to look at these things, that our effort as leaders should be towards transforming the livelihood of the ordinary person. And that has been the focus of my party and my national chairman, and he has been preaching about this every time, that mobilization and reaching out to people is not about sloganism, it's not about shouting, it is about transforming the life of that person. We are the ones supposed to expose them to ideas that can transform their lives in terms of production, in terms of home hygiene, in terms of settlement, in terms of market outreaches, in terms of infrastructure that can help them communicate with one another. And that is what we've been doing. So, yes, preparation starts from within the parties, understanding the issues and presenting them, and two, listening from the people. What do they want you leaders to do? I'm happy that, yes, the Democratic Party stands for truth and justice. And my good friend, Honorable Mukasabida, has said that for them as DP, they are sure that they are not going to win, even if they put a candidate. They know the winner, and I'm sure he knows that it is NRM that will win.
Because there will be
not because of any other reason.
Yes. No, it is for that reason.
But because we prepare well. And we prepare well, and we understand why we're in leadership.
Honorable Tudong, most of the complaints, especially looking at the last 5 cycles of elections, the NRM has been accused of commercializing the elections, especially gerrymandering in the elections with security forces. When you hear all these attributes that are pointed at the NRM, do you hope to improve?
By the way, for your information, when we had our iPod meeting, one time we were all sharing experiences from the last elections. As NRM, we also complained. Our members were beaten, our members were arrested, we lost some of our members, others were beaten by security personnel, others were beaten by other members of other opposition political parties. So we all got affected equally as political parties. It is not to say that the security and, you see, separate the state from government and from political parties. These are 3 different things. We contest to run a government. Okay? The government has a component of the state. The state is not contested by political parties because the state will always be a state. The state will always be a state. We contest to run government. And all these are things that we play with and we see them in our faces. And so to say the security personnel and the security forces work to defend NRM, that is not correct. If that was the truth, UPC would not have defeated us in Dokolo. UPC would not have defeated us in Oyam. We would have rigged elections, we would have used money, we would have used security to beat people, ballot staff, and do everything. They would not have won. And but because we are civil and we practice this, we congratulated them. Our national chairman even congratulated them in Oyam and even in Dokolo. When he came to campaign, he was very clear. He said, mind about the interests of the people. Transform the lives of the ordinary person. Make sure the ordinary person has food, has home hygiene, is producing something that is good for the market, and his life has changed. That does not need political party. That needs a leader who is genuine to his people. That was his message. And so,
And I know Honorable Mbide wants to respond to that. And fortunately, I was here with Honorable Jimmy Akena when the by-elections in Northern Oyam happened, and you were here. You addressed the issue between the chairman of the Electoral Commission of the NRM, and there was an issue and a video that went around. Allegations of voter staffing, videos that have gone around, especially with the NRM, every passing year, like Dr. Sarah said, it seems to worsen. As the ruling party, what do you hope to do about such things?
but let me tell you something. Elections has many interests. It has many players. There are those who can pretend to be supporting a particular candidate, not necessarily on behalf of NRM as a party. They might be supporting a candidate either because of their relationship with that particular candidate. I heard about that incident in Oyam North, and I was there. You might have interest to ask, I've been in all these elections. Have you ever heard my name doing such things? No, because I'm a little more civil. I drove to the site. I found some of our vehicles were stoned by their supporters, UPC supporters. I just calmed our supporters, said, no, don't retaliate. Withdraw from the place. Go back to our base. And they drove back. I drove to the sub-county where the accused person was taken. I did not find the person. They was taken to another police station. So I was asking, who is this person they're accusing? I have not got the answer. So my interest was to know whether the person is NRM or not. My chairman electoral commission drove to the polling station, and indeed they had an exchange with the Honorable Jimmy Akena. I did not know what triggered that, whether he was being accused or he went there to see what was happening at the site. So really, up to now, he was at the scene and then with my chairman electoral commission, they even exchanged some words. I watched on the screen. But to me, my issue is, as leaders, we need to be above such petty issues. And as leaders, we need to respect the rights of the ordinary person. If I am not voted, if my party is not voted by the ordinary person, for reasons they know. And by the way, for every election, there are different reasons. The reasons in Oyam North were quite different from the reasons in Dokolo. I was in both of them.
Okay.
Why they voted for UPC in Oyam North, it is not the same reason why they voted for UPC in Dokolo. So they are quite different.
Thank you, Honorable. Honorable Mbide, you had a comment before we take a break.
Yes, my comment is something that I would like members of IPOD to study clearly. Because Honorable Todong has actually told you that there is a difference between NRM party and the state. Now, there is what we call cause and effect, where the same state, the state has existed under, of course, under government led by the same person for over 30 years. Both what you call the NRM party and the state are now inextricably bound together. They are fused completely. It is actually very inconceivable how you can even detach the two. In fact, one leads the other. The state drags the party along with it, and that is what happens. So you can't, in fact, where now we have reached, the effect is that it has been established the politics of prebendalism, where those now in government have assumed an absolute right to resources of the country, and by way of corruption use the same resources to garner political support to consolidate the seats that they hold, right from the president to wherever, to the extent that now every village wants a minister, because that is the only way they expect to share the cake. And this is a result. And if we don't, for us, the party of truth and justice, we cannot look at that and promise to win an election, presidential at that, where we don't have access to that. Why don't we look at, because we can look at there is a difference between democracy and a dictablanda. When they allow you to take Oyam, that is the principle that emanates from a dictablanda, not a democracy, where a substantive presidential seat you don't touch, but the rest you are given some bit of rights to take a few for purposes that it can exhibit some degree of democracy. Those ones are late. And I know the president.
But Honorable Jimmy is here. Were you given those seats?
No. Gentlemen, we take a break right now. And when we come back, we'll be delving into this and more, especially on the solution side, what the country needs and what are our pain points. This and more after this break.
Fred!
Osmosis.
Freddy! Fred Dollar, my boss, CEO Inojo, the general of generals, the conqueror of conquerors, the first and the final, the sky above the skies, the promised land, the terms and the conditions, the international king crocodile, the source of the
Osmosis.
the Nile.
I don't have money today.
Just take a polite loan of 200k to stock my shop. The signs and symptoms of success. The bank commander, not the bank teller.
Why hassle for a loan when you've got MTN Momo? We're sorting. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from the different loan options from our partners and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable.
The government of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is calling upon all stakeholders such as the chief administrative officers, city mayors, resident city commissioners, city clerks, city and division councillors, wards and LC chairpersons, as well as the residents and business communities to cooperate with the UBOS field teams as we embark on advanced preparations to conduct the National Population and Housing Census on the 10th of May 2024. The census will be a 10-day exercise to obtain statistical data and information that will be used for planning and policy formulation, including information on 1. How many we are, 2. Where we are, 3. How we are living, 4. What we own, and 5. Where we access services from. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics has now started listing of households and mapping in the 11 cities of Arua, Fort Portal, Gulu, Hoima, Jinja, Lira, Mbale, Masaka, Mbarara, Soroti, and in the Greater Kampala comprising of Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono districts. For more information, please call 0755 342 128 or 0773 342 128. This message is brought to you by the Executive Director and Census Commissioner, Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Census 2024. It matters to be counted.
Nyati Motion Pictures brings you Tuko Pamoja Toro segment. Follow the romantic tale of an adventurous prince, Kaboyoka Susunkwanzi, who fell in love with a beautiful county.
Toro Kingdom was carved out of Bunyoro Kitale.
In 1830, King Nyamutukura akasindika omutabani we Kaboyo yekile Toro kama tongere kumumchwekere bukodo.
I'm forming my own kingdom.
Nyoro na Batoro basically muntu womu.
Tuko Pamoja, daily screenings at Ham Cinemax in Wandegea, Sunday 7th to 13th April 2024. To get a ticket, call 0778 787 660.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Birete, Honorable Mukasambide, Honorable Jimmy Akena, Honorable Babu Francis Edward, and Honorable Richard Tudong. Let me read some feedback so that we jump into our conversation immediately. This is Jamil from Koboko. If we want to enjoy democracy in Uganda, we need to have true reconciliation, merit, opportunities for all, respect for individuals, community, unifying language, like what is happening in Tanzania, and respect institutions, okay? Thank you very much. Good evening, Timothy. This is Robert, watching from Fort Portal. The roadmap to 2026 elections, we only see NRM party as the party which is prepared because they registered their voters. The rest of the parties, especially in the opposition, they're still sleeping. To me, I suggest the concerned citizens let EC introduce meritocracy to reduce the number of presidential candidates on the ballot paper, because many are prepared but few are ready. Okay? Good evening, Timothy. The political climate in the country is different, and many young people are coming into politics due to the economic pressure. Political parties splitting among many young people. Among the other things in them, words like NRM is winning the landslide of over 75% compared to the previous elections. Nahamia Emmanuel, thank you very much for watching. The last two, the political parties are in for money. None of the opposition parties have really put their foot forward on political reforms. Because without these reforms, they're just wasting time. Ocheru Dennis there. And finally, Emma from Koro says, UPC has shown some sense of change, evidenced by 2 by-elections. So the Honorable Jimmy Akena, we are giving you a trial from Northern Uganda. This is a northern case, and we are assured to move in the same direction. We will mobilize for you in the region. Already a vote of confidence there. Doctor, let me come to you. When you look at our politics, TDA, we have tried alliances, pressure groups, political parties. What vehicle is going to bring liberation to this country? And what do Ugandans need? There were some pains that were mentioned by Honorable Jimmy, education, some you mentioned the economics. What do we need? And all these purpose vehicles, just like we said off air, seem to be individualized in the way they're proceeding.
Well, our electoral democracy challenges are twofold. One is context, and the second one is the actors. When you look at the context, there are 4 issues that you need in a country to create a level playing field for democratic governance to flourish. These include the rule of law as number 1. And under rule of law, you have 2 benefits for electoral democracy. That is equality before the law, but also the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms that bring in now the freedom of association, assembly, and speech, including public gatherings, freedom of movement, freedom to impart information and campaign for your parties, among others. The second issue that is needed to promote democracy is active citizenry. What is the level of information, awareness, knowledge of the citizenry that compose voters now who choose the people to lead them? Article 1 of our Constitution says power belongs to the people, who should exercise this power in accordance with the Constitution. But also it includes that the people will exercise or choose who should govern them at all levels through regular, free and fair elections. So who are these people now that own the power, the political power in the country? Some of the people, and I know at a very early age I participated in elections, 2001. My opponent was giving, including 500 shillings or 1,000 shillings, and I looked at people. I said, Bushenyi, this is a model district. How can you cast a vote because of 500 shillings? 1,000. I think the most money given then was 2,000. And I was looking at the level of development in Bushenyi. I was really baffled that people were saying, at least this one has given us. Let them also go and eat. This is 20 years ago. The level of money in elections now it's obscene. People use up to 2 billion in a parliamentary seat. Meaning that voters are selling their sovereignty to the highest bidder. These are some of the things Lee Kuan Yew talked about, saying democracy cannot be a public auction. But our elections are a public auction. If you look at the money political parties use, you wonder even what is it. 6 people in the parliament here used 2 billion and above to campaign. In a small entity like a constituency, you are using 2 billion. So unless we cap the money in elections, unless the people, and I know my friend Todong here, you are the biggest victim. Because I am of the view, and I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt, that NRM keeps itself in power using 2 elements, money and violence. I need to be convinced otherwise. So, I am telling you as a government, the governance actor, election observer, if you look at the report of finances in the last elections, and you see the money NRM candidates was using, it is 3 times above the other candidates. So this is that documented. Somebody in Bushenyi used 2 billion to campaign.
Has the citizenry become so gullible that we're willing to sell our sovereignty for a particular cost? Aren't we to blame?
But the two issues that increase the use of money in elections, one is increasing poverty and hopelessness of the people. Two is loss of trust in government in terms of the dividend, which should be service delivery. So the reasoning of people that we continue to interact with is that these people live here to also go and eat. So let them first give us their share, our share. However small it is, after all, they do nothing for us. So those are the two elements driving the use of money in elections. Loss of trust and loss of trust in service delivery, which is a key function of executive and party in power. But also poverty. Somebody says at least I can go and buy soap. Let them give me my 1,000. Sovereign right. You sell it for a piece of soap. This is the level of hopelessness of a voter. So the number 3 ingredient we need to promote our democracy is efficient and functional, independent and functional institutions. Independent and efficient. Look at our parliament. Look at the institutions of governance. Look at parliament, look at the electoral commission, look at the other entities that participate in elections, the electoral offices at the district level. Some of them become visible only at the time of elections. At the funding for electoral commission, I know that some of the items are exaggerated, like the legal fees. And we discussed it through the lawyers who handle elections for electoral commission, and I know they are watching. Electoral commission receives annually an estimate of 120 petitions. Even if they allocated 80 million, each of these petitions, and they handle some through their legal team, they need a maximum of 6 billion for electoral petitions. But they budgeted for 18 billion, meaning the bill is inflated 3 times, and they are fully aware of this. But some of the electoral elements are underfunded, although they are looking at low-hanging fruits and exaggerating the prices, which is really unfortunate, Justice Byabakama and your team. But the truth of the matter is also some of the ingredients of the roadmap are underfunded. And there is need for that money if we need a good election. But the most important is the competence of the people and integrity of the people who occupy these institutions to serve Uganda and not individuals or parties. The last element that we need are the checks and balances. If our constitution says the UPDF should not participate in elections unless invited, from Article 0208 up to 2012. But we took a pictorial coverage of the 2021 elections because pictures speak for themselves. 80% of opposition rallies were disrupted by security, including the army. General Mshamuntu is regarded as peaceful by most political actors. 43 of his campaign rallies were disrupted by the army. When you look at violence that started right on nomination, people manhandled as they got to get nominated, as they leave nomination, presidential candidates. In other countries, you know, presidential candidates are respectable. You are given police once you're declared a presidential candidate. You are a president in waiting. But somebody's undressed on nomination day. What message are you sending to the population? The way we manhandle, really brutalize opposition in this country is beyond what is acceptable. The levels of violence in this country have reached the level that if not checked, they can break and undo all the progress this country has achieved.
How do we change that narrative? Especially on where we have influence, the population?
Of course, the first, especially on the conduct of security forces, the president is the commander-in-chief of the security forces. Unfortunately, there is a permanent candidate in our electoral cycle. And of course, the stalemate on transition. So you have total state capture. Honorable Todong said that the party is different from the state. That is the ideal. But the pillars of the state have been captured by NRM and a failed transition. They serve only one person who is the president. They don't serve Ugandans.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Mbidi, let me come to you.
You smile, don't get annoyed.
The hopelessness you gave us, especially on the election and how the results are already predetermined. How do we navigate a peaceful transition of power? But also secondly, how do we have, especially UPC, DP, and the NRM, have the loss of a founder's syndrome holding them back? Because can we imagine the NRM without the president?
Yes.
And is DP and UPC suffering from the founder's syndrome?
No, they don't. Let me tell you, why don't we look at majorly, two countries within East Africa, how they have dealt with their politics. The Republic of Kenya, it has robust and a solid kind of demographic voice coming from its tribal regionalism, to the extent that once you sit with a leader, you can obtain consensus that reflects actual consensus right from the villages of that leader, where he comes from. They have forged a way forward in terms of a democracy where there is respect to voices, basing on what we here call sectarianism. Okay, here we have completely erased it. Fine. But what have we put in practice? In view of the same, instead now money or the lack of it have become the two tribes. That those with the money have got a distinct voice and a say in terms of the results of an election. Let's look at Rwanda, for example. What have they done? When they looked at their own problem, a dichotomy of opinions based on substantive cultural subgroups that were fermented historically, what did they do? When they wrote the constitution, they put in Article 10, and the article, of course, read in Parliamentaria with Article 62 of their constitution. Article 10, fundamental principles of state policy include 10C, power sharing. That is guaranteed. Article 62, both the President of the Republic of Rwanda and the Speaker of the House of Deputies, which we call Parliament here, cannot come from the same party. Now, meaning a rules of an election is expected to win some organ of government. Number two, whoever holds 50%, over 50% of members of parliament, does not hold 50% of cabinet. What does that mean? That after an election, you can't even see walk to work. Because clearly everybody has some sentiment of administration. To the extent that then, you can see one leader who has led a country over 20 years, beginning to get even 98%. So the question of who leads the country becomes a useless question. They can give him even 100% because it is no longer contentious. Now in Uganda here, when you don't establish checks and balances within the sentimental impulses of political weight and political participation, the resultant effect would then be you are evolving a system of authoritarianism, which now creates two dichotomies. Those that are in power and the protest support by those that are out of power. So protest support is what exists in Uganda, and that has led to an effect against the creation and flourishing of political parties. That now political parties cannot flourish because we only have two sentiments, for and against. Now the sentiment of against is a protest sentiment that unquestioningly can support anyone that is believed to be the one that is a threat to the establishment. We have evolved now a system of idiocy. We now need an idiot detection system because idiots now can dazzle Ugandans because we have a low relative political maturity of the masses. They can dazzle Ugandans with the wrong opinions, completely dolcish and imbecilic opinions as frameworks of government and a promise. They can even get promoted on job before you, who is cerebral. They can even become president. It almost happened in Uganda. So I can tell you, we now must go back, talk, evolve an idiot detection system, evolve a system that has, in fact, checks and balances. Like the US, a popular vote cannot determine a president. There must be a system of electors. In Uganda here, if we don't establish a system that now begins to sieve, people can even thank a president for construction of a road. That means they don't even know why they should vote a kind of government. Now, we need sieving systems, we need dialogue, we need to go back. Parties don't exist. They are registered, but essentially they don't exist because the mechanism and manner of running and administration of parties is not based on what ideally is the objective reason for which parties should be formed. So, meaning we are just living a life of we call it Chichi and Ladida, completely pretentious leaders that dazzle people with wrong opinions, others, we call it celebrity panjandram. Whoever launches a very nice song can be elected president in Uganda. So, yes, we have seen it.
Launches songs.
We have had the candidates here singing. President Museveni has sung. The runner-up of a recently concluded presidential election, who is a musician. So I can tell you now, for all intents and purposes, anyone who can be president. We can't leave a country in
polyliterate.
That is the truth. So we need to get back. My brother, this system cannot, if you want now to hold an election in Uganda that determines the next leader, you are telling me that you can ban education but establish a system of examination. You examine those that have not been taught. Honorable Babu has just told you, civic education, we don't even have a calendar program when it is going to begin. Instead, we are now thinking that probably if the Virgin Mary intervenes, we can have voter education, but it won't even also be held. Now, what are we telling the country?
Honorable Mbide,
yes.
One of the things in the cooperation agreement you have is a peaceful transition.
Yes. But do you know what has happened?
You already said hopelessness, so how is this going to be?
It is completely hopeless. Let me tell you, we have a transition established in the Constitution, and every political party is enjoined to organize itself for that kind of transition. But that is not the transition we are talking about. And I had one person, one politician, one day, NRM politician saying, no, transition is provided for under Article 109. No. And I can see the president organizing himself under the same kind of transition. That in the event that the president resigns, which of course in Uganda's case can't apply, but in the event of his death, for example, that is probable, God forbid. The meaning is that within 6 months, we can now have an election held. So the NRM government has organized itself for a possible transition. To the extent that, of course, here in Uganda, the biggest question is political, but the answer usually is military. So the president has organized himself in such a way that it is possible upon a death that somebody else can be president. Whoever now is in charge of the military capacity will definitely determine who becomes the president. So he has done it and he has concluded it. But that's not what we are looking at. The Democratic Party believes there must be now dialogue. We need to establish now a national dialogue. We need a new framework, a rebirth, a renaissance of Uganda. New rules. Let the president also, we are not saying he should go, but we are saying there must be a different way, a different mechanism of leadership for Uganda.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Honorable Jimmy, how do we link the politics to the people with substance and not form? And secondly, how do we end politics of destruction? I know the internal contradictions within the UPC, but how do we end it so that we are substance and not form?
But I think you're overplaying the internal contradiction in UPC. I've been in it, I am in it, and to what extent? I see it in the media, I see it in some other areas, but I don't see it in the politics. That's the reality. In the politics, it's not there. So if you play it, to some people's mind, it may be there. But the reality when it comes to elections, competing for seats, or going out in the field, supporting other candidates, it does not exist. So let's put that one aside. One of the key elements when I was fighting for increased funding of political parties, one element which we really wanted to work on was the question of policy development, which will address the issue which Captain Babu raised, that the manifestos of parties are not quite there. They're actually quite shallow, because how do you really develop a clear policy direction on a particular subject? A lot of what we try to do, we try to patch things together, but it is not as well researched as it should be for a political party. Where NRM has a difference is that NRM uses a lot of the government institutions to produce, and that's why sometimes you see their manifesto and things. There's a huge document which is not normally what will come from a political party as even no, please. There are other governments. Look at the manifesto of other ruling parties. It's not a whole volume like this. It's not.
But we have a lot to achieve. That's why it's a volume.
But you're not achieving it. You're not achieving it. You're failing terribly on many of these issues, and that's why we're going to take you on. But it's an area which we wanted to look at, right? Now, the approach, we have different approach. I know DP's ideological standing is different from us in UPC. What they'll come up with is different. The objective will be the same. Ultimately, we want the children of Uganda to get good quality education, to be competitive across the world. How to achieve it, we'll approach it differently. But that issue of development, the element which Todong's chairman brought up, that we should be able to have our district offices. Those are some of the issues which we're putting when we're discussing the increased funding. Mine was, how do we strengthen the functioning of parties? Because even developing those policies, you need to go through the organs. We need to be able to sit, we need to adopt those organs. And parties, we struggle to have these meetings because of the resource constraints. So parties are not functioning as they should be because of various factors. Yes. But even if that should not take us to say, no, because of this one, parties, we can do without them. There are those who say that multi-party is a flawed system. But there's no better system than that. There's no other system which can deal with the rights of association, freedom of speech. It's only within the multi-party context. It may not come out perfectly, but it's the best system out of everything which is there. Beyond that one, you will get things which essentially a dictatorship. If you want a dictatorship, you'll be able to get it. Now, how do we develop it? How do we increase the issues of tolerance? How do we have a civil discussion on the future of Uganda? Those are areas which we need to work towards. Now, one of the key elements which we've been suffering with, and I think it will help on what Sarah was saying, people have lost hope. When you go and campaign, people have lost hope. So they say, okay, no, there's nothing, I'm going to get this election. If I just get above, so that's it. They don't believe that the election process can really make a difference in their lives, can make a change in their lives. And that is something which is very depressing. Because you're trying to encourage people to get involved and determine the future of the country, but people are thinking that it is hopeless. And both in the issue of Oyam North and Dokolo, I had to assure the electorate that their vote counts, and I'll make sure that their vote counts. And that encouraged some people to come out and say, fine, if that is the case, we'll take your word for it, and they came out to vote. So we do have a big challenge which we're going to face, and the bottom line to all of this one is, I said it in the beginning, I come from the point of view that if you're not going to be vigilant, they're going to steal the election. It's like, for example, a critical life serious exam. If there's no invigilator there, what's going to happen? I know from experience in the interactions with, in the elections which have taken place, if you leave the gap, they will take that gap. So you must put everything in place to make sure that the election is not stolen. But you can't stop all of it. When you come to Oyam, in Icheme, the night before, they beat and chased all our agents. We started on the issue with the wrong footing. It is only late in the day that we're able to stabilize. No.
Brought them to Oyam.
No.
The same you did to Dokolo.
No.
Non-residents on the eve of the voting night. You came with almost 500 motorbikes.
Thank you for bringing that one.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that one.
Is it true?
I use motorcycles. And this time I informed the security and the Electoral Commission, I have motorcycles. Motorcycles are going to follow the ballot box from the Electoral Commission stores to the polling station. That way is well within my rights. And this NRM saying that they took all the drones from Lira were in Oyam. All the police vehicles from all over northern Uganda were in Oyam. All. Then they say now, because I brought motorcycles, they had goons from Lira. I knew them.
But you are the one who brought the goons.
I knew them.
Mine was the ones who brought the goons from Lira.
No.
But anyway, that is what we went through.
Lira must be full of goons.
I didn't bring goons. I brought motorcycles. And I don't dispute.
Let's have Honorable Jimmy complete his point.
I don't dispute. From the Electoral Commission, I'm allowed, when they opened the store, we're supposed to be there. I was there physically, personally. They loaded the ballot boxes according to the parish on one pickup. And also Electoral Commission brought pickups from all over Uganda. They were labeled there, all sorts of districts and whatever. You see them there. Now, this parish has 5 polling stations. 5 motorcycles will follow that pickup. It goes to the sub-county. From the sub-county, it goes to the polling station. My motorcycles will follow. Now, those motorcycles which are following are different from the motorcycles or other teams which are working on the ground. Those ones you don't even need to know where you're going. You're following this thing and you're making sure where it goes. Is that a crime? There's no crime there. It's well within my rights.
So why is Richard saying there?
Now, when my motorcycles were going in the evening, some of his leaders, and I actually know the members of parliament, they called police and said, there is motorcycles coming, hundreds. No. The motorcycles were number according to the polling stations. I can't quite remember exactly how many polling stations. I think it was 60 something.
Every polling station you had a motorcycle?
I had a motorcycle.
Perfect.
To follow this one. Now, they called and they said motorcycles are coming. Police went and picked those motorcycles at night. No.
From Lira town.
No.
Honorable Todong,
we even arrested some.
Now,
we have cases in the
I'm going
police.
to come back to you. Respond to him.
You see, this is where it really angers me. That there's this group of people who said they went to the bush because of rigging. I dispute that one. 1980, I dispute. They said they went to the bush because of rigging. Now, after being in power for 37 years, they're now saying, oh, Akena can rig with motorcycles, yet they have the police deployed there. All the DPCs in the region were there. Army was there. Them as NRM, they're all there. And they're saying motorcycles. As somebody, a simple person on a motorcycle can rig. Then what have you done all these years? If the whole issue was you went to the bush about rigging, what have you done? You can't stop rigging? Then we have failed. What? All these people died in Luero. All these wars were for what? If the key thing was rigging, and now you're saying I rigged, you have failed. No.
What happened to DP? You are still repeating the same story.
Honorable Dodong, let me first bring in Captain Francis Babu.
Before we go,
yes.
Before we go there, this element of saying that rigging, it's a way that to diminish an electoral result, to create this issue that elections, after all, are nonsensical. And this is something which I should not be hearing from a whole Secretary General of NRM. Let us have something which is credible as far as the election is concerned. If I have rigged, please prosecute me. Go ahead and prosecute me. Do not let me walk around and say, no, he rigged anyway, we let him. No, I want to be prosecuted if I've rigged. Take it up on that one, because the future of Uganda will depend upon having credible processes. If a process can be easily dismissed, then we're going nowhere. We're not resolving anything. We're not going to reach a point where we're going to have an election where we're going to respect the outcome of that election. I'm sorry, Timothy, if I've got a bit agitated on this one. It doesn't augur well. We fight very hard for these victories. We fight very hard for these victories. And then you have somebody dismissing it as rigging.
And if you need a motorcycle per polling station in Uganda, where we have close to 35,000 polling stations. That is over 175 billion just on motorcycles for every party.
Honorable Midday, you've missed the part of his phase of protecting a vote. He will tell you how he did Oyam. No, Captain Babu, let me come to you. Especially, it concerns us as Ugandans when we look at the trend of how the electoral cycles have been. When you look at 2026, what is the future of this country and how can we secure it?
You see, unlike other people, I always have hope. I don't live in bygones because you cannot live on mistakes all the time. You've got to have a positive mind. How do we get this thing corrected? We are human beings. We have the power. By the way, you don't need even dialogue. One person, look at what Magufuli did in 5 years. See what happened to Tanzania. You need just people who are really serious to change this country. Now,
where do they come from?
We have them. We have them. In fact, what Todong was saying about a political party, how it's supposed to work, and all these people, that's the correct way to do it. Unfortunately, in those parties, we have people who hijack those good things. They hijack and spoil the parties. They start fighting on issues which are not even there. By the way, earlier on when you were talking about the president of UPC, you kept on talking about the problems in their parties. You should ask all of them, all the parties, what problems they have in their parties. You'll be very surprised.
No, when I was asking Honorable Jimmy, it was really on politics of destruction. When you look at the National Unity Platform, when you look at FDC,
yes,
it is really not building, it's tearing each other apart. So
exactly.
how do we get past
That's
that?
what I was trying to say, that all parties have the same problem. Now, let us go to, let's go very carefully. And can we change what is happening? Yes, we can. First and foremost, one of the biggest problems in this country is to have unity as a country. Me and Jim here, we have no problem at all. Me and Todong, we have no problem. But we need to do this for everybody so that we can unite our country. Now, that's very, very important. Before we even talk, because these parties to work in the other countries we are talking about, the countries had united already. If you look at Britain, the parties came when? If you look at France, when did the parties come? First of all, the country was one, and then the parties came. What happened, and this is where I like Dr. Julius Nyerere's idea of uniting that country. He used very simple words. People called it communism and socialism, but he used ujamaa, undugu, and the language. United that country. It became one. Now
how would that happen here?
It can happen. We have a basis of getting this done. I don't want to tell you, anybody who wants to get that idea, I'll be a consultant. I'm not going to give you my idea on television, how to unite this country. Those people who want to be leaders should become leaders. Now, let me go from that point of uniting this country. A good political leader is the one who makes others leaders. Meaning, if you're a leader here, you must make everybody all the way down leaders so that they become independent. They become leaders who actually feed you with information that you require to make the country move. Earlier on, somebody was talking about these countries, I think it was Honorable Mbide, saying that we should create good leaders, we should look for them, and that is what Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew did. He looked for leaders who had merits, meritocracy. Then he looked for people who had pragmatism. And lastly, he looked for one word only, honesty. The other day, they just chose a prime minister in Singapore. And they took a long time before they got him. They were looking for only one word. Not qualifications, not how educated they are. They're looking for the word character. Time has come for us in this country to look for character. People who can be leaders. Leaders who mean...
What would be the yardstick for that?
Oh, that's very simple. A leader does not... But have you ever seen cows going to drink water? There's usually a cow that goes ahead. Human beings have got leaders. They are leaders among us. Among this 48 million, half of them are young, take 20 million, and those are a little bit, take another 10 million. Out of 10 million, you can get good leaders. So I'm not worried about that. Now, action speaks louder than words. We need to show leadership, not hijack parties. What you are seeing now are people hijacking parties. They hijack because of their selfish interests. And unfortunately, they proved that point. One of the economists who said democracy cannot work in poor countries. That's what these people are doing. By behaving the way they behave, they are telling the world, one, that we cannot rule ourselves as Africans, which is an abuse, in my opinion. Two, is that democracy doesn't work among the poor people, because that's where money comes in. Now they keep on talking about money. How do we convince that poor man that, look, if you choose somebody, your ideals will become true? That you need to now sell to the people in this country. Instead of telling them it can never work. It can work if we are all serious and we have a bit of humility. The other point that I keep on talking about, you talked about our countries next door. I've just quoted one. The country next door has gone through a lot of problems. One of the things that makes them a little bit better is that their economy has got a few more people inside, and therefore they protect what they have. And therefore, the ideal of having those parties. But look at how many parties are being formed every other day in that country. Look at the problems they have because of that. So, to stop dazzling, I like that word, to stop dazzling our population, we've got to tell them the truth. Yes. Tell them what we need to see. Now, the other day somebody said, oh, but this man has been there nearly 40 years. Forget about the 40 years. Can he do something even now? Must we keep on blaming him, if he's watching us, Mr. President, the change should come now. We need, even before the 2026 elections, we need to show kind of kindness to each other. We need to respect each other. We need to change this country. So for me, unlike other people, I cannot continue saying, oh, the security. Let's look at the security, by the way. How many policemen, and maybe Todong can help me, how many policemen do we need during an election to supervise the election? Policemen. Forget about the army. Do we have enough policemen? If we don't, then two things can happen. Either we keep the army completely out and we go to our neighboring countries and we borrow policemen, like Haiti has borrowed policemen from our neighboring country. Or, between now and the next election, we manufacture the number that we require. Can we do that? So, security.
Maybe some bit of information.
Yes.
The electoral laws provide for police constables. So those are the people who should be trained in a short while, because elections is not war.
No, I'm coming.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And that's exactly what I say. Can we increase that security before 2026 and get the numbers that we require? Do we have that capacity? If we don't, as long as we don't have enough policemen, the security of a state can be supplemented by the other security organs. So we need to sit down. And I think we should stop just blaming. We should find solutions.
Okay.
Is the police enough? And if it is enough, it's not enough, like she said, constables. How long does it take to train constables? Do we have the money to train the constables? So these are the kind of questions we should be answering now. And I agree with her entirely. I have no problem with that. The question is to keep on blaming the same government with 43,000 policemen, and probably will require 100,000 to do that job. What do we do? So these are the kind of questions we should be answering instead of blaming. The other point that I want to bring up, and this is, if you have political players who keep on saying, we must overthrow this government by next week, we must remove this government by next week, what do you expect the person who's in the government to do? He's going to look at you and put a red carpet for you to come and remove him? Let's stop being like my friend. What did you use? Idiot? An imbecile?
Imbecilic and Dorothy.
These are the words you used. These are the words you used. Because to sit here, I've been hearing people on different media saying, we're removing that man next week, we will do this. The man you are talking about can also remove you. I keep on saying, hey, next week, I'm going to remove him. You go in the elections, you also have opponents, they can remove you. So the whole argument is that we should stop using these words, idiocy and imbecility, and come to the reality. There is a government, there is a state, and we need to separate those two from the elections. That's what the argument somebody was saying. And when you say that it is one party that is fused with the government, then these other parties which are in government are not there. But I know there are people in that government who have come from other parties. And they're there. It's not small. You might think they are small because they have been there for some time. Some of them come from different parties.
Okay.
Right from the beginning of NRM, I want to put this point very clear. There are people from different parties who were in the NRM, and some of them are still there, and some of them have been brought in even now. So the proportional representation my friend wants to talk about, when we were in the constitution making, people brought it up, and it was refused. And by the way, it was brought up by the leader of DP at that time.
Yes.
And we refused it for one reason. It has failed in Italy. Everywhere the proportional representation has been taken is not working. And we said no. Let us choose from other systems. You know, Italy has been, at one time was changing government every 3 months because of proportional representation. So it depends on a country. I wanted us to bring that point, and I want to end by saying, action to all of you leaders is extremely important, that you do the right thing for our people to see. And those ones who are spoiling parties, it doesn't matter which party, should go back and rethink their methods. You have to build a party which has got respect among the people, and to stop these games. I was looking at the race, the Kabaka's race. A group of people were taken there to go and insult one of the leaders, and they were organized. That's wrong.
Okay. Let me bring in Honorable Todong. First and foremost, is an election going to happen in 2026?
Of course, we are going to have elections, and the Electoral Commission.
How do we achieve a Uganda for all politically, regardless?
Yeah, let me answer that in a way that I think it will help us. For us in the political arena, we need to understand the origin of politics and the beginning of all this that we are talking about. I earlier on spoke about the social systems, and I want to speak about the concept of politics, the ideological blocks that form politics, how it transforms society, and how it changes over time. Because when you read the history of politics, you realize that politics was premised on factors of production: land, labor, entrepreneurship, capital, and these factors were triggered towards transforming the lives of the ordinary person, like what we've been talking about. But after the Second World War, after the formation of the United Nations, and after the Cold War, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, new dynamics came into politics. The new dynamics is, of course, there was an hegemonic contender to capitalism, which became socialism. When Professor Karl Marx wrote a critique of capitalism, he challenged the concept of factors of production, which was looking at individual ownership. For him, he looks at communal ownership of factors of production. But those were ideologues, those were ideal positions of discussing politics. Now, we deviated from that after this confusion of the world, groups of interest started coming up. Human rights came, feminists came, democracy came, accountability came, radical groups came. Politics changed forms to the extent that representation became mirrored through social structures that you represent. And that was how, after independence, most of our political parties were formed. If you read a little about the formation of Uganda People's Congress, the formation of Democratic Party, what happened, the KY movement in Uganda, and what happened between the alliances and all that, because we started politics based on sentiments of religion, of tribes, of representation of personal interests, not on factors of production that can change lives.
True.
I don't need to be a Catholic. I don't need to be an Acholi. I don't need to be anything else for my interest to be addressed by a government or by a political party. What are my interests as a human being?
Mm-hmm.
I need where to sleep, I need where to eat, I need to educate my children, I need health care, I need a road to move on, I need a market for my products, I need to produce something.
To work.
Now this does not have religion, do not have tribes, do not have anything, but any government worth its name, any political party worth its name must address those issues. That is why a poor FDC supporter, a poor NRM supporter, and a poor UPC and DP supporter, they share poverty as a center of commonality. And poverty does not look at your religion, does not look at your tribe, does not look at anything. Poverty is poverty. So we as leaders, how can we help our people transform and change, regardless of the political shade we hold and we represent? And that has been the message of my chairman and the message of my party. And that is what we stand for. That we as leaders, we need to look beyond our political shade to help the people. And that is why NRM government, its policies does not segregate. It's by the, if you read again a little, in the 80s when UPC was in power, the tension between UPC and DP was real. I can give you an example if I had time, but the tension between UPC and DP was real. That your constituency might not get services if it's represented by a DP candidate. That was there. I was there, I witnessed how Anaka Hospital in my constituency was built and how Kalong Hospital came because of difference of politics. But under NRM, all these social differences, we are saying, no, we take you as you are and we help you understand what unites you and keep away what separates you. We preach unity more. Now, very briefly coming to what my colleague said. My sister Sarah talked of violence and money. We don't preach violence. We don't. Yes, we use money in election, but in a very small way. We support our candidates with the nomination fees, and we print for them posters. And we give them little support for fuel. If someone in a constituency X spend 2 billion, the party cannot afford giving a candidate 2 billion shillings to go and spend in an election.
No,
if each and every candidate spends a minimum of maybe say 500 million shillings, there will be a serious inflation during campaigns in this country. And that is something that we should concern all of us. So we cannot spend that amount. But of course there are cases where such amount of money could have been spent, but it wasn't from the party. The party cannot give such an amount to an individual to go and spend. Two, Comrade Bide talk of power sharing, talks of managing transition and all that. Our elder Honorable Babu talked of how it failed in the past, but we are managing it in Uganda. We share power in different, for example, our governance platform is shared by those who believe in political parties and those who don't believe in political parties. And those who are not supposed to be members of political parties as they serve the government. For example, civil servants are not supposed to be members of any political party by law. If you are a civil servant and you want to join a political party, you must resign. That is sharing, governance platform. We have members in parliament that belong to different political parties. They form opposition, they challenge government, they question government, they are chairpersons of accountability committees of government. That is sharing governance platform. We have members of opposition in cabinet. Honorable Jim Akena's wife is a member of cabinet. The president of the Democratic Party is a member of cabinet of Uganda. In the beginning, in 1986, the first cabinet of NRM, NRA, 80% were DP members almost, the majority. So we share these things. We have gone through practice, we know them. Transition is not just by a switch, don't I give it. Transition comes through a planned way. You manage the economy, you manage expectations, you manage geopolitics, you manage disappointments, you manage excitement, you manage so many things in transition. And then transition is built over time. You know, transition is like driving a manual car. When you're engaging another gear, you remove your leg from the pedal, you step on the clutch, you move. And also it depends on where you want to engage that gear. Is it on a hill, is it on a slope, is it in a corner? So it is as complicated as that. And that is why Uganda is very steady. Understand the geopolitics. Our local issues here, how does it play in the environment that where we belong, in the neighborhood? When Uganda is surrounded by all these countries with the issues, and it has become a beehive of refugees, would that be something that you don't look at? Or is it because we just want tons of leadership? Today it is me, tomorrow somebody else. Where are you taking 48 million Ugandans as a leader? Where are you taking them? What programs do you have for them? How solid is this country going to be that can serve everybody? We need a country where if there is a transition, those who might not agree with that change should not be prosecuted, should not be chased from their country, should stay in their country. Let me tell you something as I conclude. These elders here might know what we went through as a country, and that's why it's difficult to compare Uganda with any other country, because our stories are different. By 1986, when NRM came, all the indicators of governance and social systems had collapsed. You know these issues. You read in books, you lived here, you know everything. I'm telling you, because you are talking and you're defending UPC, which was in power, but that is the truth, Jimmy. You are not in the country. You are in. But by the time you came, things had improved. Let me tell you. By that time,
I left in July '85.
Okay, but by 1986,
I will produce the statistics.
I didn't interrupt you. Can I speak?
You did.
I did not.
You interrupted me. You brought in so much interruption about the year.
Let me finish, because we are time back. Can I conclude? I need to come back with Honorable Jimmy, but let me conclude.
I'm going to provide the statistics.
You should, please.
Don't lie on national television.
No. I'm not lying. I'm not. This is the truth. This is the truth.
It's not true.
Some of them cannot be associated to UPC, but during Amin's regime, this country collapsed.
Talk about that one.
And then UPC came in 1980 through the window that you came in 1980 up to 86.
Okay.
Because even that coup was part of.
Let's have you conclude.
Anyway, the issue is building a country takes time. Building social capital of a country takes time. It is not, even 40 years are not enough. We are quick to compare Uganda to America, US, Europe, where America is a democracy of 300 years.
So you need another 50?
No, hold on.
That is why I resisted comparing it to anywhere.
My sister Sarah has read the policy
borders.
circle.
Yes.
For a policy to be effective, the minimum is 20 years. We have just done, we would say, 40 years is nothing.
Okay.
You cannot compare.
Let me read something.
So we are still around. NRM is still around. We are still looking at another 50 years. So please keep ready and bear with us.
Let's read some feedback that is coming through. Good evening, Timothy. About the political landscape taking shape here, the straight answer is it's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. 95% of the electorate is peasantry. They can't read. They need to understand what's happening. 38 years later, it's still the same. Opposition is self-destructing. Finally, the political leaders are not accountable to the electorate. It remains the same. Only God knows the landscape that will change. To message there.
I'll send you statistics.
Okay. Another one that comes through, Emmanuel says, free and fair elections, all we need is for everyone to come on the same page. And this is James from Lira City. Okay. Hello, Timothy, thank you for the show. This is Bonnie Francis from Lira. The doctor has spoken the reality concerning the elections. Please, Ugandans, let's stop selling our rights to MPs because they haven't changed our rights to business, and the people should stop betting or buttering us with trade for what we need there, okay? The weaponization of poverty is the biggest threat to democracy in this country through making people dependent and MPs distributing money and the players of our politics. Improve the people's economic situation before we talk about credible elections here. Dennis from Kira. Finally, this is a lengthy one, but I'll pick out a few things. DP and UPC should stop thumb chasing. For us, Jaja is still here with the few seats that they hold. After all this, the two parties are in bed with the ruling party. What can be changed with all these things happening in bed with them? Okay. We'll leave it at that. I see Kenneth and various people that have sent in their messages, quite a number of messages that have come through, and we really appreciate that. Gentlemen, Honorable Todong, thank you very much. Honorable Babu, thank you very much. Honorable Jimmy, thank you very much. Honorable Mbide, we appreciate. And finally, Dr. Sarah, thank you for coming through. To the team behind there that has made today possible, thank you. The producer and the guys on the floor, thank you very much. We'll end it with this quote today. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
107.3 Kampala, 96.9 Mbale, 95.7 Jinja, 98.6 Soroti. You are all covered.
UBC Butebo. UBC Butebo.